Madam President, at a time,
Senator, we're in a quorum call.
I would ask that the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Madam President, at a time of massive and growing income and wealth inequality, the American people are outraged at the unprecedented level of corporate greed that is taking place all around them. Today, while the working class of this country is struggling with higher gas prices, higher food prices, and higher housing prices, the billionaire class and large corporations are doing phenomenally well and, in fact, have never, ever had it so good. In the United States today, while the average worker is making $44 a week less in inflation accounted for dollars than he or she made nearly 50 years ago, corporate profits are at an all-time high, and CEOs have seen huge increases in their compensation packages. We have never seen in this country the level of corporate greed that we are seeing right now. Unprecedented. Now, let me just give you a few examples. While the price of gas has soared, it is now $4.25 a gallon on average. ExxonMobil, Chevron, BP, and Shell made nearly $30 billion in profit last quarter alone, just last quarter. Meanwhile, big oil CEOs are on track to spend $88 billion this year not to produce more oil, not to address the crisis of climate, but to buy back their own stock and hand out dividends to enrich their wealthy stockholders. And here's more corporate greed. In fact, it is never-ending. Amazon raised the price of its Prime membership by 16.8%, while it increased its profits by 75% to a record-breaking $35 billion, and, by the way, managed to avoid paying $5.2 billion in taxes. Meanwhile, the founder of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, became $81 billion richer during the pandemic and is now worth some $186 billion. That is his worth. More corporate greed. The price of beef is up 32%. Price of chicken is up 20%. And the price of pork is up 13%. Meanwhile, Tyson Foods, a major producer of chicken, beef, and hot dogs, increased its profits by 140% last quarter to $1.1 billion and gave its CEO a 22% pay raise last year to $14 million. Meanwhile, the owner of the company, John Tyson, nearly doubled his wealth during the pandemic and is now worth some $3 billion. You want more corporate greed? Here it is. We are looking at outrageously high prices for prescription drugs, and in fact, we pay by far the highest prices in the world. Last year, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and AbbVie, three giant pharmaceutical companies, increased their profits by over 90%, 90% increase in profits to $54 billion. Meanwhile, the CEOs of just 8 prescription drug companies made $350 million in total compensation in 2020. When we talk about corporate greed, we are also talking about massive levels of income and wealth inequality. In our country today, The two wealthiest people own more wealth than the bottom 42% of our population, and that is more than 130 million people. Two people own more wealth than 130 million Americans. And the top 1% now owns more wealth than the bottom 92%. Since the Wall Street crash of 2008, about 45% of all new income has gone to the top 1%. In other words, over the last many decades, there has been in this country a massive redistribution of wealth. Unfortunately, that redistribution has gone in the wrong direction. It has gone from the middle class and working families to the top 1%. Now, I understand that that is not an issue that we talk about much here on the floor of the Senate, not an issue we talk about much in the media, but it is an issue that must be talked about and, more importantly, must be dealt with. And listen to this, which I think really says it all. During this terrible pandemic, when many thousands of essential workers died on the job, they went to work in order to feed their families, they contracted the virus, and thousands of them died. During that same period of time, over 700 billionaires in America became nearly $2 trillion richer. Working people die on the job because they have to feed their families, and 700 people, not a whole lot of people, became $2 trillion richer. So that is where